Oh, forgive me. We're gonna reboot here real quick.
There we
Yes,
go.
obviously
Microphone
we're
check.
not
One,
prepped.
two, 1, 2.
Mic check 1 2 1 2. Once again, thank you for those joining on YouTube. Those first couple of minutes were silent. I just realized at the last minute. Once again, thanks for joining on Instagram or thanks for watching later in the clips. Anyhow, this is Fuck Your Feelings, the show. Thank you very much. We normally broadcast at 9:30 Eastern Time, but with today being Thanksgiving, we figured we try to hop in between games, and I mistimed that a little bit. So right now, I think the Dallas Cowboys game is what at halftime. Let me tune in and check on that really quick.
So he wants to do the show, but he's still checking out the game score.
Yeah, Giants up 13-7. They got a field goal right before halftime. So some people might be hopping on in between. Go Giants. Cowboys suck. You know how it goes with me. But to this nation full of Cowboys fans, because unfortunately there are a lot of them. I don't understand why.
Well, Texas is also a huge state.
They really
so-
love them Dallas Cowboys, and it's a historic.
It's a historical,
franchise
yeah.
in the NFL, so yada yada yada. Anyway, here we are today on this holiday that is to commemorate family. I think we've moved way past like pilgrims and stuff like that in this country as far as
What is, as a non-American, what is the
That'll be
origination of
interesting. Let's do
Thanksgiving?
a
I
little
don't
bit.
really
Yeah, I know the
understand.
crap they used to teach us when I was in grade school.
Because you
see
guys
how
take
it's-
this holiday very seriously.
It's evolved a bit now. We celebrate any day we ain't got to go to work. But no, Thanksgiving is a national holiday celebrated on various states in the United States. They got all of the countries and all of their.
What do you remember from school?
It was about when the Pilgrim swim came over on as the founders of this country. Apparently, I don't know how they found anything.
When
because there
people
was-
already here, there were
Exactly.
inhabitants in your
So
country.
the Pilgrims apparently came over, and apparently the Indians, it's a way of nicing up the interactions between the Europeans coming to the New World and their interactions with the Pilgrim. I mean, with the Native Americans.
So they exchange, they break
So
bread.
the story was kind of told that the Indians, the Pilgrims were shooting bad. The Indians helped them out. They had a big feast. They showed them how to survive in the New World, and this day became the day to commemorate
A day of thanks.
a day. Of
Well, that's what you're
thanks,
supposed to do with people. You're supposed to break bread with them. Like that's the idea when people come together. That's how I was. You break bread. I guess that's maybe where that
pretty
thing.
common tradition in most of the world is a meal to commemorate business deals, wedding, marriages,
anything.
family,
You break bread.
deals. Yeah, so that's kind of the tradition. But to little kids in elementary school, it was kind of pushed as like, oh yeah, and the Indians had turkey, and they should.
Indians were not having no turkey.
Bunch of stuff. So yeah.
Sorry.
Anyways, I don't really know. So what we celebrated today, it's a day for NFL football, getting together with family, feasting with your family and friends, and family arguments.
Let's talk about it. This is
Can't
your
talk about
topic.
Thanksgiving without family arguments. And I didn't really want to get into it, but I did want to talk about, as a couple, when you are in a relationship, kind of the role on your extended family, how that can play into, the dynamics of your relationship, the dynamics of your, how you guys interact with each other, how your partner or significant other interacts with your extended family. And that's where we came up with the title of, well, I did basically.
You did.
In-laws versus outlaws. We all know in-laws is the colloquialism used to describe one's mother-in-laws and father-in-laws, and again, extended family by virtue of marriage. Outlaws is when those people don't do nothing but cause chaos and havoc in said relationship. They move from in-laws to outlaws. They become very problematic, very much an issue, and we just wanted to talk a little bit. Hopefully, we got people that will post or share stories about crazy Thanksgiving
You want to know the difference between
issues.
in-laws and outlaws?
What's that?
Outlaws are wanted.
Outlaws are wanted.
That's
Yeah.
what I put up on
Yeah.
YouTube to
Yeah.
promote the show. But that, you remember Outlaws back
Yeah,
in the
with the
Western
wanted
world? Yes,
signs,
the
yeah,
wanted
that green
side.
one,
So
yeah,
that
yeah.
was the funny joke of that's what
And
people say. That's the
outlaws
difference.
usually are wanted. I be having targets on them. Like, look, your mama cannot come back over here no more acting like that, and vice versa. You know, every family has the drunk uncle, the mean ass auntie, granny can't stand nobody, get cussed, or
I actually
you
don't
know.
have that.
No, I don't have a ton of it.
That.
My inner family dynamics on, maternally and paternally are pretty interesting. There's, well, I use kerfuffles and altercations, but not really a ton of big arguments and drawn, like definitely not like physical altercations, like it. I think it just tends to be kind of the modern way of when you have falling out or you don't really mess with somebody like that. You just don't really mess with them like that. You know
Agreed.
what I mean? It's just, but what's interesting is I've noticed also one thing that happens in families is sometimes one say we're cousins and Uncle Jimmy is my favorite uncle, and Uncle Jimmy, you can't stand Uncle Jimmy's guts, you hate him to death.
Okay.
And it's the same dude, but again, his interactions amongst family
are very
can be
different.
very
Yeah.
different from
Yeah. It's among
person to
siblings that
person.
happens,
And
among
amongst
parents
siblings,
and
yeah,
kids
yeah,
that
all that.
happen.
So it always happens. So, what I wanted to kind of talk about is how those family dynamics can be so difficult to navigate sometimes, or how they shouldn't be as difficult to navigate when you impose something called boundaries. As far as boundaries are kind of like the fence that borders your homestead, your relationship, your property, wherever they can be imaginary, they can be physical. But yeah, boundaries kind of say, hey, this property is tended to differently from the property outside of this fence.
Correct.
And I think that those are one of the most healthy, one of the most needed aspects in a mature developing relationship is you got to have boundaries. You can't just let any and everybody have influence in your relationship. I think that's a recipe for disaster.
But how difficult is that for a lot of people to have boundaries surrounding the relationship, especially when it comes to parents or grandparents or people, again, Uncle Jimmy, who you care that much about, but has overstepped the line. What has to happen for boundaries to be set? Because I think sometimes when these things happen, it's too late for the boundaries. Like you said, the no that you like to do. Like once your parents, so once my in-laws already overstepped a boundary, it's too late to try to reel them back because they didn't even have enough respect for me to overstep that boundary. So now you're trying to set the boundary in place. It's too late. They've already disrespected me. So there's already an issue, right? A sister-in-law, a whomever. Like if my sisters go at your neck, that means that whatever I was feeding them or I didn't stop them from going after your neck, because I should know they were going to go after your neck.
I just think that and again, not to dismiss it, because I definitely agree with the point that you just made of, it's already too late. But at the same token, there's just some people I don't want to say you have to deal with, but they're just a part of things. We both
Rob,
talked
you
about.
put this wrong.
Oh well.
Please, can you actually turn
It's
it around? Because this just looks ridiculous
just
when I
turn it
have to
off.
do.
Like, just turn it off, please.
What do you mean turn? So I don't get to thank my sponsor at the end. Okay,
You can
continue.
thank her. Yeah, nothing is preventing you from thanking her. It's a much easier transition than trying to flip the camera around in the middle of a broadcast. So anyhow, I think with certain people, especially like family and folks of that nature, it's there's no end all be all fit all way of things hitting. Um, you have to deal with. Well, I don't want to say you don't ever have to really deal with anyone, but as far as some people are more difficult to get along with than others, and I think that's where it becomes kind of case by case, individual by individual thing. But probably the best thing that helps with situations like that, to be honest, is just distance. You know what I mean? Like when that person just does not have the ability to physically
But at the same,
cross your boundaries or take up your space or push into your area,
and
for
that
lack of a
might
better way of
sound
putting it.
ideal and that sounds great, but now you've got to think about, okay, so there's physical distance. Does then that create distance between the couple? So my mother has disrespected you. Now I'm putting a boundary in, and you're saying, listen, your mother's disrespected me, and like I now have to put a boundary in place. Does that now create a distance between you and I? Because I do have to put my mother on pause, but then I'm not really putting my mother on pause because I'm still having a relationship with my mother, even though she's disrespecting you. And you might be like, how are you still going on having a relationship with her when she's disrespected? Like, there's a lot of things. Again, that's why I'm saying when these situations, when the disrespect has happened, sometimes that's too late. And how do we avoid that? Because
You can't. I don't think there's a way you can't preemptively control anyone. You know, like I said, some people are more difficult to get along with others. But I would say just in overall, I think as people, especially as black people, we have to start trying to move away. Like I think black people are the absolute worst at cancel culture as far as just that mentality. Sometimes it's, oh, you do something I don't like one time and I am done with you. And there's nothing, you have that right, but what'll happen is ultimately you'll start running out of people because
But I
no
don't think
nobody
people
is perfect.
cut people off, especially in families, because they did something they didn't like. A lot I do things people I my family does things I don't like every day. There's something between difference between something someone does not like and blatant disrespect. There are things that are blatantly disrespectful.
Again, I agree with that. I understand what you're coming from, but it still doesn't change the fact that it's like to me, you put that person on timeout. It's just like, yeah,
What does your spouse do though? Because you've put them on timeout. What if the spouse wants a temporary time, a permanent timeout for that? I just don't want to deal with this person in your family.
then that is what it is. But it's like when we had the I'm Mad show. I think that takes a certain amount of effort after a certain amount of time
But if
too.
you're talking about boundaries, maybe that boundary for that person is, in order for me to stay in a space where I can do what I need to do, I just need that person to not be a part of my life.
And that's what I'm saying. I still stand on the fact that I'm saying I think that to enforce that over an extended period of time is difficult when you're going through family dynamics. Like I was thinking, I was reading an article online about the two brothers. They then this goes back to their 20s, but one brother slept with the other brother's girlfriend.
Okay.
Okay. Now here we got the one brother who was the one who got cheated on by his brother. His daughter is getting married 20 some odd years later.
Okay.
She invites her uncle and he gets all pissed off and in a fury, in a tizzy about, oh, if you're inviting him, I'm not coming, and whatever money I was going to pay to help you with your wedding, I'm not paying no more, and et cetera, et
Well, I
cetera.
think that's
Let,
extreme.
let me finish it.
Okay.
No, it's not an extreme situation. It's a good situation to example, to use it to make an
You never let
example
me
of,
finish.
as far as, look, there's going to be family gatherings, there's going to be family get-togethers, there's going to be family engagement, there's going to be family movings around, and if you're on that I don't deal with this person, then you're having to actively be like, I don't deal with this person even in other interactions. And I just think that, again, I tend to believe in that saying like time heals all wounds. But that doesn't mean I'm going to give you an opportunity to be right back into the same place. So if you let a person close to you and they cut you, I think you have, even if you choose to deal with that or interact with that person again, you would keep them much more at an arm's length, wouldn't you?
So let me be clear because you cut me off. I didn't say the example was extreme. I was going to say his reaction is extreme. I think that is an extreme reaction to have because at that moment, he doesn't require direct interaction with his brother. This is something for his daughter that's much bigger than that moment that him and his brother have. But I do appreciate the fact that at the end of the day, he had boundaries. I choose not to deal with you, whether it's the memory of what you've done, whether it's how what you've done made me feel, how interacting with you. That's a boundary, and we have to respect his bound. Give me a moment. We have to, like, I gave you a moment. We have to respect his boundary of not wanting to deal with his brother. I think he's got to still see the big picture that this is about his daughter, and he's actually punishing his daughter for his brother's behavior. But I think there's nothing wrong with saying, and as my boundary, I just choose not to deal with that person. He's not, he did it a little bit more saying, well, you can't interact with that person because I don't interact with that person. I think that's crazy, but I think there's a level of respect for the person saying, I understand that you were disrespected and you don't want to deal with this person. And if that's forever, then that's forever. I'm not going to force you to, if my mother disrespects you or my father, rest in peace, had disrespected you, I'm not going to force you to interact with them at all. Not even at family events. I will not force you to do so. And I'm going to check my parents and say, this is why Rob is an F with you, is because you were outright disrespectful and we're not going to have that. I will never, if you never want to speak to them again, I'm going to respect that because that's a boundary you've set.
How can you enforce that? If we're at a family, okay, we're having a family gathering at Olive Garden, I'm there and the person that disrespected me is there. How can you enforce them never speaking to me again?
You can't. I can't control what they do.
Or how can
If
I,
you
how
decide
can I
not to speak,
enforce them never speaking to me?
you know
I can
what?
never speak to them again, but I cannot control them coming up to me. Hey, it's been 5 years. I apologize. Can we get over this? And I might have the right to say no. That's not.
Hey, there you go.
But that's what I'm saying. It starts to feel to me more like a grudge than it is a boundary, because to me the difference is I choose not to deal with someone is different from I refuse to deal with someone. They're not the same, I don't think.
But I don't think. Oh, there we go. There we go. There we go. This whole thing is a disaster. It's not mashed up. I use it all day.
It's not even really going nowhere. Technical difficulties. We can just. It's.
Sorry, we had technical difficulty. We've got a situation happening here. And there's no need, since it's turned around, that doesn't need to be even plugged in. Like, it's not turned the right way. So that's creating heaviness on the thing. That's why it's being pulled down, because it's heavy, but it's not turned around. So we don't need it. We don't need to see this because we can see this.
How's the mic going to be taken?
I don't know.
Anyhow, like this is, yeah, we're just, again, probably should be getting ready to eat and stuff, but instead we're up here trying to provide some content for y'all, and we might make this a 30-minute episode.
No, we're not going to make a 30-minute. There's no reason to do so. We just fixed it. Anyways, I need content because I do the clips and Robert doesn't get that. I need content to put it weekly because it makes my life difficult when there is no content to put out to create clips. So we will continue. So I'm going to say, I think to impose what you think a person should do based on the fact that they were disrespected by someone is unfair. I think it is unfair to your spouse to impose, well, my mother disrespected you, but I think it's wrong of you to never speak to her again. My father disrespected you, but I think it's wrong of you to never speak to them again. Because it's like, how does the person who disrespected me not be held accountable for their actions? And now, and I get it, because you need to have family events and all of those different things. But now, again, there's friction with the spouses for something that spouse didn't even do. It's something that a family member did. Auntie, uncle, mother, father, child, especially with blended families. So that's why I'm saying these boundaries that we talk about, yeah, we can set them, but are they truly enforceable? Because once the disrespect has already happened, it's too late. That's my concern.
I don't really, like, to me, it's, I think it's, I don't, first of all, I don't think that we even view it the same way, because guys in general tend to not be so much worried about other people. Like, and I'm just kind of putting that if there
Elaborate on that.
if me and Uncle Jimmy got in a fist fight last year,
Okay.
and Auntie TT is having Thanksgiving at her house.
Okay.
The fact that me and Uncle Jimmy got into a fight last year, I can go to Thanksgiving at TT house, and he can be there, and it doesn't even impact me. It doesn't bother me that he's not even there to me. I can
Correct.
interact with everyone else there other
Correct.
than him.
Correct. We do see it the same way. I don't understand why you're saying
But
we don't see it the
I
same way.
tend to think that females, they say that, but then they get into space, and the attitude starts to permeate a bit more to where it's now, oh, something that winds up being said about something, or something, like, oh, why is she over there looking at me like that? And you feel what I'm saying? I think the cattiness starts to get into those type of situations, because to me, I'm if like I said, I just kind of look at it as I'm just dealing with you at arm's length. You kind of showed me a side of a person that I'm not really even messing with like that on a certain aspect. So it's just easy for me to, if that's how the interaction is gonna be, then it's just won't be no interaction. You know what I mean? But I completely understand. Sometimes people feel it needs to be more permanent, or needs to be like a stronger, more conviction around the boundaries. But I think ultimately that just comes down to that person. You know what I mean? Like, I would say, for instance, if you know Uncle Jimmy disrespected you and you don't want nothing to do with Uncle Jimmy, then I think that that's fine. But I think it's also something that it just has to be like, it is what it, but it doesn't change the fact that that's my uncle. So while I might not deal with him like that, I can't say you'll never have to, he will never be around at anything that we've
So
got going
but
on.
that's the thing that I'm saying, right? And this is what I need you to listen to me. I think I am not saying that you don't deal with your uncle. What I am saying is the tension it creates because I don't want to deal with your uncle. You're going to do with your uncle whatever you please. But when your spouse is now saying, I don't want to deal with Uncle Jimmy, he is drunk, he's disrespectful every time we get to these family functions, it's too much. I don't want, for my own peace and sanity, dealing with Uncle Jimmy. If I never deal with Uncle Jimmy again for the rest of my life, I'm okay with that. But your relationship with Uncle Jim is what the relationship is. I'm saying, and I'm asking you, how do families deal with that level of thing of, I'm your spouse and I don't want to deal with your family member? I'm not saying that your relationship with your family member should be impacted. I'm saying that I don't want to deal with your family member. Is that going to impact our relationship? And if it does, how does families deal with that? Because events like Thanksgiving, which is a big deal in the United States of America, come around every year. And so does Christmas. And there might be weddings and graduations. But if we think about the thing that comes around every year, Thanksgiving and Christmas. So at some point, I'm going to have to see Uncle Jimmy.
Hmm. The best way I can say it is like, I you want to not interact with Uncle Jimmy? Like, I can't. What, am I forced you to?
But so how does, again,
I don't know what the
how does,
question is. Like,
how, what do you recommend for families who, again, the spouse does not want to deal with a family member, knowing that there are holidays that come around when they have to interact potentially with that family member? And what advice would you also give them not to create tension in the relationship, especially when you're saying Uncle Jimmy, this fictional Uncle Jimmy we've created, is your favorite uncle, but I can't stand him because he's been, and I don't can't stand him, not just because I can't stand him, it's because he's blatantly disrespected me. And now you're gonna have couples who think, well, your Uncle Jimmy's blatantly disrespecting me. Like, why the fuck? Like, I'm your wife, I'm your husband. I'm your partner, I'm your fiance, I'm your whomever. How are you allowing this to happen and kikiing with Uncle Jimmy? Like, F this entire family. There's all of these, everybody's going to react to that situation so very different. It's such a complicated place to be in, because if that's my Uncle Jimmy, and I love Uncle Jimmy, he's been my favorite uncle and he's helped me through anything, but he's basically told you that you're a piece of shit and for no good, and if he had a shotgun he'd shoot you dead or something like that. Uncle Jimmy. So now I'm torn between Uncle Jimmy that I loved, my favorite uncle, and the man that I am married to or going to marry. And that's a difficult place to be. So when you talk about, you started this show with talking about boundaries, what do those boundaries even look like? Because at this point, it's not even a boundary. I think it's got to come down to choice. I've got to say, Uncle Jimmy, that shit was disrespectful as hell. And as much as I love you, I can't F with you, because you should have, your love for me should have been enough for you not to disrespect him, because you know my love for him. That's how, for me, so Uncle Jimmy for me's got to go. I love you, Uncle Jimmy, but you got to. I can't deal with you.
But for me, you realize how many times you said should in that.
I know how much times I said should, because again, this is all hypothetical and right, it's a complicated situation.
But it's also like, how does any disagreement get resolved? One person has to get over it so that there can be a bridge to resolution.
Why does it have to be resolved?
Who said it does? If it doesn't matter to you, then it shouldn't matter to you. Like,
but so who does it? But again, but who does? But it's gonna, again. You were talking about in-laws now. It's right. Not just a friend. It's not just a whatever. It is. Let's talk specifically about in-laws, mother-in-law, and father-in-law.
Certain people, and it could be male or female, start to get into territory where it's very difficult for them, because it's turned into a zero-sum game. Oh, your dad disrespect me, I'm your wife, choose me or your father. I think that's a ridiculous platform for a wife to be in.
But I don't think a wife should ever have to make her husband make that decision. I think most wives would want their husband to just make that decision. If I have to force you to make a decision, you didn't want to make the decision.
I think that's a very feminine way of thinking about it.
Well, that's the only way I can think. I'm a woman.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. I would never resort to violence because my woman thought I should.
As you shouldn't.
I resort to violence when I know
correct.
I need to stand on violence.
Correct.
So to me, that's kind of the difference.
There is, but that's basically what I just said to you. I don't understand how you didn't hear it. No, I, as your wife, am not going to tell you that you should not deal with your father because of his blatant disrespect to me. But inside, as your wife, the woman who gave up her last name for you to be a part of your family, that's something that I would want you to just do willingly. I don't want to ask, but most women are going to be like, you know what? I wish my husband would sever that relationship, because what his father did was so blatant or what his mother did was so harmful to me and potentially our relationship. I'm not going to tell him. Most good wives are not going to tell you to do that, but they're going to watch to see what you do. Because now they say to themselves, what happens is the relationship continues, and unless there's a check moment of, did he even check the parent to say, you know, what you did was absolutely disrespectful to my wife, and that shit can never happen again. Because if that shit ever happens again, you and I have got to be done, because I gotta make sure that my household that you raised me to be the leader of, that shit is harmonious. So the first time it happens, it might be whatever, but by the second, or if it happens a third time, I think the wife starts side-eyeing her husband, and the husband is going to start side-eyeing the wife. Like, you're just okay with this level of disrespect, and you want me to key and forgive. You don't realize how harmful what they've done to me.
I think what you're doing is you're taking your feelings and you're putting them into the other partner.
How so?
Because you're saying, like, this. How I don't see how you can say, I'm choosing not to deal with this person
So
But you're
so
also
me
deep
the hurt
down
so the
and
hurt
say,
spouse.
no, but you're also, so yeah, the hurt spouse is also saying, and I'm also expecting you to also choose not to deal with them as well. That's what you're saying. And
I think ideally that's what the other person, male or female, would want.
and again, and I think that that's one of those, it's kind of
Especially
like
if
a
it's
shit
happened
test,
multiple
you know what I'm
times.
saying?
One time is
And
forgivable. I think one disrespect is forgivable. Two disrespect, then three disrespect, and it's just like no spouse wants to be a punching bag for your family.
you see how I just feel like it's I don't it's okay. No spouse should be a punching bag for in-law. No spouse should, but there should also like okay. So on the flip of it, it sounds like the situation is just extreme as you don't. You said something I didn't like. I didn't speak to you for 3 years. We were cool for a year, and then again, you said something I didn't like, and then I didn't speak to you for 3 years. Like I don't. What's the point of that?
So let's reverse it. The spouse is disrespectful to the parent. I cuss out your mother. Stink.
It's this. It would have to be the
What
same.
happens?
It would have to be the same stance. Or now you have to now again as the person that's stuck in the middle of this of two people, and regardless of who started or who had it going or whatever, now you're kind of stuck in the middle of trying to navigate that. And the best way to do that would be is the same thing because it's like I would say with violence, like I would say with my daughter if you never put your hands on a man, I can enforce a man will never put his hands on you without my repercussion. But once you start feeling that you can go smacking guys, I can't deal with that the same. So, like what you're saying, so the person outside of the relationship disrespects the person I'm in a relationship with is not the same as the person I'm in a relationship with disrespecting someone outside of it that's a part of my family. It's not the same.
And so that's the issue. That is going to be the issue for most spouses because they know they're always going to come secondary to the in-law.
How does that even?
You just said it's not the
secondary?
same.
That's not what I said.
I don't think most wives go out and again, I can't speak from the standard of what I see on social media. I'm talking about being raised in a traditional household where at the end of the day your elder is your elder and you do not disrespect them. But again, if you're disrespected once and you're disrespected twice and then there's only so much, again, they say there's only so many paper cuts that you can take before that shit really starts to hurt. So every time an in-law disrespects someone, it's like a paper cut. And they're taking little tiny paper cuts until one time that paper cut hurts like hell. And so the in-law disrespects the spouse says nothing, they tell the other spouse. The in-law disrespects the spouse says nothing, they tell the other spouse. The in-law disrespects the spouse and the spouse has had enough because clearly telling the other spouse isn't working and they fire back. So what you're saying to me is for the spouse, it's not the same. You're basically saying to the spouse, take the abuse, don't ever fire back. Because you firing back at my father or my mother, they're in my family, you're not. And for a wife who's given up, that's the whole point, the traditional thing. So I'm confused with what you're saying.
I can see why you would be confused, and I can see it. It's because, again, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, whether you want to accept it or not, you have the person in that like I said, I think okay, if this person disrespects you and you choose not to interact with them, how are they continuing to disrespect you? Are they going out of their way looking for you at this point in time? So like say, my sister disrespects you. You block her. How is she still disrespecting you?
So we're giving like that's not what you were saying before. I'm not talking about, we're talking about, okay, you're setting boundaries. You're saying that you still got to come together and you still got to, that is the premise that you've been on.
That's just a part of life. And and again, to me, you're coming from the premise of, I am going to, it's a hard stop. Like I refuse to have any interactions with this person. And That's what it is. Like, and to me, I just think that look, there's certain people. It's not like you're interacting daily with this person. Like, who hangs out with their in-laws every day?
Yeah, well, I mean, I now know where you stand.
Yeah, you think you do, but
So,
we're talking about a
like,
scenario as opposed to
I sound like I'm shit out of luck. Like I just should continually take disrespect over and over again. And I mean, I'm a woman who's not going to say anything because my in-laws are my elders. It doesn't, your aunts, your uncles, anybody who's older than me. I grew up in a family. You do not disrespect your elders. You call them Miss, you call Mr., aunt and uncle. When an elder speaks to you, my sister is 14 years older than me, and you've seen my relationship with my sister. My sister speaks to me, I listen. So I'm in a situation where, unfortunately for me and some women who were raised like me, will continue to take something. I'm not going to cuss out your mother or cuss out your father or cuss out your sister, your aunties and anything. That's just that's not going to serve me. That's not for me. However, I will just cut myself off from them because I will not take somebody coming at me continually and my spouse not doing anything about it. And I think most people don't want that. But to cut this part, because I think you're taking this really personally, I listened to a segment today and it was interesting because it was something very similar to this, but different. And it was somebody calling in, if I can find it, it was somebody calling in to Young Jock Show in Atlanta. It was a young lady who's engaged to a gentleman, and he wants her to accept the fact that he's going to invite his baby mama and the child to Thanksgiving. They're recently engaged. The parents are meeting for the first time, but the baby mama, who's already created issues in the relationship when she was just a girlfriend, he feels that in order to have a good relationship, the baby mama also needs to be there. Now, I can't find the clip, but I'm going to find it in a second. What are your thoughts on that? Because the baby mama's family,
How?
she in this guy's mind, she has his children or child. In this situation, it was a child. One, it seems to be one child. So he has the child. Oh, I found it. So this woman has his child, and that child is his family. So in turns, he feels like his child's mother is also family, and Thanksgiving is a time for family. And therefore, as family, his fiance should accept the fact that that child's mother is family.
No, I don't agree with that. One, I think the ex trumps the family and the Thanksgiving interactions. Like, that's who tries to invite the person they were with and the person they're currently with, to invite. And I guarantee the kid ain't very big because that's why it's all an issue. And I don't really understand why she can't just bring the child to the home where they're having the thing and drop them off and come back and get them.
Well, that was interesting because that was Young Jock. Like Young Jock was like, this is ridiculous. Like, there's no way. Like, what are you talking about? And I can probably play a little bit of the clip as we head out of the show. But yeah, actually, let me see if I can.
Like, that doesn't even make sense.
And this, I guess, my issue was what
so
he
Young
said.
Jock wanted his baby mama and his fiance at the same Thanksgiving, or someone
I
else.
know you absolutely do not listen. I said someone called into Young Jock's show.
Okay.
This is when I know you don't listen to me because I literally just said that. But let me go.
Hey, this is Candace. I'm calling for Leon. How are you?
Hey, Candace, how you doing? We good?
Yes, good. I got some issues going on and I need some help.
You sound sexy and sick.
No, I ain't sick.
I thought you were gonna say I ain't sexy.
No, but my man Leon, we recently got engaged over the past year.
Oh, that's great. So what, you broke it off?
Well, no, so his baby mama, she wanna come join us for Thanksgiving dinner, so we were going over to his parents' house. And my parents are coming, and I just don't see why she's trying to insert herself into our family. Why does she need to be there?
You don't think she should be there?
No, because first of all, her energy is off. She has such a bad, nasty attitude. She talks bad to her children about me. Last year, it turned into a whole big thing. It was like we was arguing, food started getting wrong. Ain't nobody trying to do that.
I mean, if y'all already done had an episode one time, ain't no sense of even playing like that. Leon should know better at this point. Why is she not just allowing the child to come with y'all for Thanksgiving or just keep the child with her? I mean, I know people be trying to see a better way and a better day, but we ain't got time to play. Not for real. Not if we done already had incidents like this.
It's not my call because it's not my child.
Exactly, which is why you shouldn't be in a situation like this.
We're going to pause because I don't care about the girl's commentary. Now they bring Leon into the conversation. And Leon is explaining, if I can get to the right part, Leon's explaining his side. So if I got, hopefully I got...
Imagine bringing your
Oh,
mom...
God.
But that's exactly...
Oh,
She's
God.
my girlfriend. This shit, she's your fiance. If she was tripping about her being your girlfriend, then what you think gonna happen now that she know this is about to be your wife?
I'm trying my best to, make them two see eye to eye.
You're not a woman. You'll never be a woman. You never buried a child from your womb. You never had a man break your heart that I know of. I don't think. I mean, if you have, that's your business. Women, they have a different wire harness. The setup is way different, bro. You trying to get them to see something out of that, it takes time. It has to come out through life itself. And I just don't know if this is going to be the smartest thing for you to do to bring her this year, man. Maybe you should just have your kid done, let her go on with her folks.
Yeah. You engage, man. It's time to let that part of it go, baby. You got to go and find her somebody in another family to have Thanksgiving.
Not necessarily. It's okay if she can conduct herself accordingly.
Ken's got to understand this. This is my child's mother. Me telling my child mother send a message to my child, and I'm not, like I told Kevin, hey, y'all need to have a sit down, have a ladies' day, and y'all hash it out, because at the end of the day, this is going to be ongoing. Me and her have this bond. We're going to always have an eternal bond. Me and her, Candace, we get married. We're not trying to bring baggage into it, but
But that's exactly what you're doing, bringing baggage into your relationship. This is a...
So he then goes on to say because I don't need to deal with the woman's commentary. He then goes on to say the fiance comes on and she's like, it's going to be me or her. And he says to her, really, you know what? I have to have a conversation with my baby's mother about this.
Again, that's he's still kind of drawn and confused by the situation, and he maybe doesn't realize that she's using the child to manipulate him and to kind of prevent him from moving on with his life. Because here's my question, baby mama, why do you want to be with his parents and his new girlfriend and her parents on Thanksgiving?
Because she was probably close to the parents. Again, we don't know the backstory.
Where is your family? Why that relationship is no longer a relationship? Why don't you have a desire to be with your people? Why don't you have people of your own?
That is a good question. And there's so many scenarios I could think of. But the reality is, at the end of the day, here is what the situation comes to. And I wanted to talk about this clip, and I wish I could play more. But again, the woman's commentary can be annoying at times. But the thing is, he's the person in the middle. In any situation, the spouse, the fiance, the boyfriend, the whomever, the girlfriend, they end up being in the middle, and there's still a choice to be made. We always talk about it. Life is a series of choices. And in relationships, when you're bringing family, and especially now when you're blending families and you're doing all these different things and different people from different walks of life, and all of these things are happening, there is someone in the middle, and that person in the middle has to make a choice. And unfortunately, there are people this is my final thing before we get to the question bowl, because we're only going to answer a couple questions. I don't even know where the bowl is. I'm pretty sure I put it over there, but I can't see it. And so what it comes down to is, unfortunately, no matter what you guys do when it comes to family gatherings and in-laws and family members and being in the middle, someone is going to get hurt in some way, because you have to make a choice. Someone's going to get hurt. Their feelings are going to get hurt, and that's really what it comes down to. Somebody is going to dislike the choice that you make. And at the end of the day, you cannot control what people do. Only thing you can do is control your choices, and you can't control how people feel about you making your choices. I agree with you that there is no way to stop people from disrespecting, quote unquote, another person because you can't control someone else's actions. And so that can be difficult. It's you're not Jesus. I can't stop someone from disrespecting you, but I can then choose how to interact with them after they've done that. That's the choice that I can make. That's the only choice I can make. And then I can then choose, if they do it again, how I move forward every time it happens. And then I have to deal with the consequence of my choice if the choice I make hurts the person that I'm with. And they're like, you keep choosing this option, and this option hurts me, and so I got to go. That's the only thing we can control. Yes, it would be nice to think we can have a utopic society and we can all get along. That's not the world that we live in. And again, I think it's difficult for a spouse, especially, or a wife in particular, who gives up her last name and gives up her family to join somebody else's family, if the spouse continues to choose his in-laws over his wife. That, and I'm telling you, as somebody sitting in a seat as has been a wife and is going to be your wife, that would be very difficult for me to deal with. And so I would just, and me, I'm a cutoff queen. So that's just me though. I'm quick to cut people off. So that's how I've always been. Family or otherwise, I'm going to cut it off. So again, my thing is, it's about choice, and you're going to have to make a choice. And you know what? We all wish that we could get along, but we just can't. And so when it comes to family things, the only thing you can do is go into family events with the best of intentions when bringing family together. So that's my final words on that.
Okay.
What's your final words?
I don't know. I don't tend to look at it. It's like, yo, because again, as a man, I'm like, a lot of that, like, oh, there's, just there's different, like, there's just a lot, like, I just, in general, these disagreements and arguments and cutoffs and all of that, like, I'd be like, yo, like, it just, who got shot, who died, like, that's that forever type of energy to me. And outside of that, time heals wounds, man. Like, I don't think very much outside of those type of interactions where, again, somebody died, somebody got their ass shot, like, it's blood behind it. I think that I can understand when people have that type of energy for those type of beefs and disagreements, but when they're just outside of that, I think it, again, because to me, if I feel like it takes so much energy to hold. That's like me being like, that's like me having an on-site attitude with a guy that I got into a fight with in high school. If I see him, I'm gonna dive on his ass right there. Like,
A guy that you got into high school is not the same as interactions with your in-laws. I'm sorry. That's
but
not
what I'm saying
even
is,
close.
over, but time passing since transgressions tends to be. That's more of the point. Is given time, usually how upset you are about the situation diminishes, unless you're kind of making it a point to keep it going. Now, forgetting and forgiving are two different things. Where if a person chooses not to deal with a person in a way that would allow them that type of access to them again, I 100% understand that. And that's at the penalty of the person who, like, you were close. You did something that was a violation, and now you're not as close. That's on you. You fucked that up.
I hear you. Okay, do you mind getting, because I'm pretty sure you put the laptop over the question, Bo.
So it's time to.
So we're just going to do two questions each.
2 questions. Thanks for joining, folks. I see you, Jay. What's up, cuz? And yeah, we about to get back to moving on with our Thanksgiving here in a moment. We just popped in for a minute. Does attraction equal compatibility? Absolutely not. Like, that's usually the worst reason to base a relationship, in my opinion. There's got to be a lot more than just attraction.
I completely agree. Should you discuss sex before having it? Ideally, but we do not live in an ideal world anymore, and people are jumping into bed because someone was cute or had on a Gucci belt. But I think in a mature relationship, for our mature audience, I think absolutely you should discuss sex. What do people like? What they like? What turns them on? What turns them off? I think just like everything else, sex should be discussed because a lot of people, bad sex is a deal breaker. And so, yes, discuss all aspects of sex. And you might find with your question that just happened, incompatibility because they have different ideas about sex. So if you don't talk about it, how do you know how your partner views it? So that's how I look at it.
Is a single woman 30 plus a red flag? Not necessarily. But it really depends on what she's moving in her purpose as a single woman. You know what I mean? If she's been in and out of 5, 6 relationships from 20 to 30 and she's still single, then it's kind of like, either your selector broke, something's off. You know, something's off.
Something to write it.
Something's off. And the same thing for a man. But if that person was in a 10-year relationship and it went sour, I think that's not as much
Very
of
different.
a red flag.
Yeah. So it's circumstantial. My final question: should you give an ex a second chance? Yes, I think that's possible. It depends on the reason you broke up, right? I think if you're thinking second chance, it clearly was a horrible breakup. So I think, think about the reasons you broke up. Has the person's changed? People evolve and change every day. If you're going back to the same person that they were and they haven't evolved, then that's ridiculous. You shouldn't do that. But if you've seen changes in them and then changes in you that make you guys more compatible, I mean, you guys could have been dating in your 20s and you're now in your 30s and you're in different places in life. So I think, again, it's circumstantial, but I don't see why giving an ex a second chance would be a bad thing.
Who benefits more from relationships, men or women? I think good relationships are symbiotic, meaning that both parties benefit. When you start trying to evaluate who benefits more, I think that's the doorway to unhealthy relationships. When you start trying to weight and color, and this is worth 1 point, now we're playing the point game and stuff like that. I think it tends to get a little messier there. I think men benefit in very different ways in good relationships than women do. And I think that men being envious of women is just as ridiculous as women being envious of men. Stay in your lane.
Got you. Does the quality of a person's exes matter? That is a good question. Absolutely. For me, it does. It doesn't matter for some other people, but yes, if you have decided that you wanted to dedicate yourself to a woman who, in my mind, doesn't measure up anything close to me, I'm judging you. And then I'm going to judge, just like you said, your picker, whether or not you're the type of person I want to be in a relationship with, because I believe that a man is the leader. But if you've led yourself down a hole of being with a horrible woman, sure doesn't seem like you can lead me. So yes, I think the quality of someone exes does matter. If the man that you are with ended up being somebody's 7th baby daddy, then you might want to question whether or not that's the man for you, because he clearly doesn't have good judgment. So I think that's why conversation is important. Too many people are getting into relationships and having no conversation about anything of any importance. And now they're in these relationships. They're like, I didn't really know the person. Well, duh, because you just jumped into a relationship because of attraction, because you thought that made you compatible.
Hot, and he thought you were hot. She thought you were hot, and next thing you know, y'all just started hanging around each other a lot. Like, that's recipe for disaster usually.
So that's why we talk about communication is so bloody important. Talk about everything, and in a fuck your feelings way, right? To bring it back to the show, in a fuck your feelings way. You may not like what I'm going to say, but this is the reality of my life, and it's not about my truth. Please, I'm tired of this is my truth. Truth is truth. There's no my in front of it, right? Yeah. Truth is the truth. It's definitive. Like, this is definitely the truth. There isn't the moment you put in front of it, you would validate the fact that it's the truth. And
Pretty
so
much.
the reality is, when you have a fuck your feelings conversation, it is an ability for someone to see life through the lens that you've been seeing it, and saying, this is the life that I've lived, this is where I want to go, and can you come on this journey with me? That's really the fuck your feelings dynamic. So before we go, we want to thank our sponsor, Sorrel and Sage. Unfortunately,
thank
they're
you.
not on the screen. Thank you, Joanne from Sorrel and Sage, for supporting our mission to change the conversation around Black relationship. You can find Sorrel and Sage on Instagram at Sorrel and Sage CA, or at their website at shopsorrelandsage.com. Robert?
Thanks for joining. Those of you that tune in later, thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your turkey day. I'll be talking to some of y'all a little later on in the evening. I'm getting ready to eat. Good night.
Okay, everybody. Goodbye, Instagram.
Bye-bye.
And for YouTube, subscribe and like this video. We hope you enjoyed this show.